The Tuesday morning flight from Phoenix to Philadelphia was nearly full when Aaron boarded, squeezing past passengers stowing luggage and settling into seats. He found his assigned spot, 12D, an aisle seat with decent legroom. As he buckled in, he noticed the woman in 8F, the window seat 2 rows ahead. She sat perfectly still, staring out at the tarmac with an intensity that seemed unusual for a routine domestic flight. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers interlaced tightly. Aaron couldn't see her face clearly from his angle, but something about her posture suggested she was carrying an enormous weight. Flight attendant Joyce Martinez greeted passengers with her practiced smile, helping people find overhead space, answering questions about arrival times and connections. She'd worked this Phoenix-Philadelphia route for 6 years and knew it well. Business travelers mixing with tourists, usually an easy crowd. Today seemed no different as she walked through her pre-flight routine, checking seat belts and tray tables. But in exactly 8 minutes, a confrontation would begin that would reveal something so heartbreaking, the entire plane would fall silent. The woman in 8F was named Catherine Mills, though no one on the plane knew that yet. She was 43 years old, and this flight represented both an ending and a beginning she wasn't ready for. She'd specifically requested seat 8F when booking 3 days ago, the window seat, that exact seat. The airline system had shown it available, and she'd paid extra to guarantee it. Now, as other passengers boarded, she kept her eyes fixed on the wing outside her window, trying to steady her breathing, trying to hold herself together. A large man in an expensive suit paused at row 8. He checked his boarding pass, then looked at the seat numbers with growing irritation. "Excuse me," he said loudly to Catherine. "I think you're in my seat." Catherine turned to look at him, and Aaron saw her face for the first time. She'd been crying recently. Her eyes were red and slightly swollen, but her expression was calm, controlled. "I'm in 8F, she said quietly. "That's my assigned seat." The man frowned, checking his boarding pass again. "No, I'm in 8F, see?" He thrust the pass toward her. Joyce noticed the commotion and approached quickly. "Is there a problem?" The man turned to her, his face reddening. "This woman is in my seat. I specifically selected 8F when I booked. I always sit window seat, and I paid for seat selection." Joyce took his boarding pass, scanned it with her device, then checked Catherine's. Her expression shifted to confusion. "Sir, I apologize. There seems to be a system error. You're both assigned to 8F. Let me find you another seat." But here's where things got complicated. The man didn't want another seat. "No, I want this seat. I selected it specifically. I have long flights ahead with connections, and I need the window to sleep against." He looked at Catherine expectantly, clearly assuming she'd move. Catherine didn't move. She turned back to the window. "I'm not switching," she said, her voice quiet, but absolutely firm. The man's face darkened. "Excuse me? I just explained that I need this seat. There are plenty of other seats available. Stop being difficult." Joyce placed a hand on the man's arm, trying to de-escalate. "Sir, I understand your frustration, but perhaps we can find you an even better seat. I have 3A available in the front, extra legroom. You'd board and deplane faster." The man cut her off. "I don't want 3A. I want 8F. I paid for 8F. He turned back to Catherine, his voice getting louder. "Ma'am, you need to move. This is my seat." The flight attendant confirmed the error. "Be reasonable." Aaron watched as other passengers began paying attention to the confrontation. A businessman across the aisle shook his head. "Just move, lady. Don't hold up the flight." A younger woman nearby muttered, "Some people are so entitled." The pressure on Catherine mounted. Joyce tried again. "Ma'am, perhaps if we could find you a comparable seat? I really do apologize for the confusion." Catherine's hands gripped the armrests. "I'm not moving from this seat." The man's frustration boiled over. "This is ridiculous. I'm a platinum member of this airline. I fly 70,000 miles a year. I know my rights. This is my assigned seat, and I'm not leaving until she moves." Other passengers groaned. Someone called out, "We're going to be late because of this?" The social pressure was immense, all directed at Catherine. But she sat unmoving, her jaw set, tears now openly streaming down her face, though she made no sound. Joyce saw the tears and her demeanor changed. This wasn't entitlement or stubbornness. Something else was happening here. She leaned down close to Catherine and spoke softly, gently. "Ma'am, I can see you're upset. Is there a specific reason you need this particular seat? If you can help me understand, maybe I can help." Catherine's lips trembled. She didn't speak for a long moment. The man huffed impatiently. "Oh, here we go with the dramatics. Just move already. Wait, don't miss what Catherine said next." She turned to Joyce, and when she spoke, her voice cracked with emotion. "My daughter was on this flight, this exact flight number 1 year ago today. Phoenix to Philadelphia. She sat in seat 8F. She was going to start her freshman year at Temple University. She was 18 years old. The plane, there was turbulence over Kansas. Severe clear air turbulence. She wasn't wearing her seatbelt. She was getting something from her bag. The plane dropped, and she hit her head on the overhead compartment. She died 3 days later from the brain injury. The cabin went completely silent. The man's face went white. Joyce's hand flew to her mouth. Aaron felt his stomach drop. Other passengers who'd been watching, judging, criticizing Catherine suddenly looked away in shame. Catherine continued, her voice breaking. Today is the anniversary. I booked this flight, this exact flight number and time, and I requested her seat. I wanted to sit where she sat, look out the window she looked out of, feel close to her one more time. So no, I'm not moving. This is the only thing I have left of her journey. The man stumbled backward. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Please keep the seat. I'll sit anywhere. His earlier aggression had completely evaporated, replaced by horror at his own behavior. Joyce wiped her eyes. Ma'am, I am so deeply sorry for your loss. You stay right there. We'll find other arrangements. She turned to help the man find a different seat, but he was already moving away, his expensive suit and platinum status suddenly meaningless in the face of such profound grief. You won't believe how the atmosphere transformed. Passengers who'd been irritated moments before now looked at Catherine with compassion and respect. The businessman who'd told her to move stared at his lap, ashamed. The young woman who'd called her entitled covered her face with her hands. Aaron felt tears in his own eyes. The casual cruelty of strangers so quick to judge without knowing the story had been confronted with devastating truth. Joyce returned after seating the man in 3A. Is there anything at all I can get for you? Water? Tissues? Anything? Catherine shook her head. I just want to be left alone with my thoughts to remember her. Joyce nodded. Of course, but I'll be nearby if you need anything. Anything at all. She placed a gentle hand on Catherine's shoulder for just a moment, then moved away, giving her the privacy she needed. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Aaron couldn't stop thinking about Catherine's loss. He imagined her daughter, 18 years old, full of dreams about college and independence, sitting in that exact seat a year ago. Excited, probably a little nervous. No idea that a random moment of turbulence would end her life. The fragility of everything hit Aaron hard. We're all just passengers on journeys that could end at any moment. The flight took off smoothly. Catherine sat motionless in 8F, her forehead pressed against the window, lost in memory. Other passengers gave her space, casting sympathetic glances but not intruding. The earlier confrontation had created an unusual awareness throughout the cabin. People were kinder to each other, more patient. A crying baby that might normally have drawn complaints was met with understanding. Someone's bag blocking the aisle was moved without irritation. Catherine's grief had reminded everyone of what actually mattered. Now here's what happened over Kansas. The seatbelt sign came on as the pilot announced turbulence ahead. Aaron tightened his belt and watched as other passengers did the same. He saw Catherine grip her armrests, her whole body tensing. This was it, he realized. This was where it had happened, where her daughter had been fatally injured. The plane began to shake, nothing severe, just normal turbulence. But for Catherine it must have been torture, reliving the moment her daughter's fate was sealed. Joyce noticed Catherine's distress and came to sit in the empty middle seat beside her. She didn't say anything, just sat there, a silent presence of support. When the turbulence got rougher, Joyce reached over and held Catherine's hand. Catherine gripped it tightly, tears flowing freely now. Joyce held on through the shaking, through the bumps, through the memories that must have been tearing Catherine apart. She's safe now, Joyce whispered. She's at peace. The turbulence passed. The plane smoothed out. Catherine released Joyce's hand and wiped her eyes. Thank you, she said quietly. Joyce smiled sadly. I have a daughter. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. Catherine nodded. You never think it will happen to you. You put her on a plane thinking she's safe. Airlines are safe. Flying is safe. And then one random moment changes everything forever. Aaron thought about all the times he'd flown without really considering the risk. How he'd complained about delays, about seat assignments, about the cost of checked bags. All the trivial frustrations that seemed so important until you heard a story like Catherine's. Her daughter hadn't died in a crash. No mechanical failure. No pilot error. Just a moment of bad luck during routine turbulence. It could happen to anyone. As the flight continued, Aaron noticed other passengers finding ways to show Catherine kindness. The flight attendant brought her a complimentary meal without asking. The man in the seat behind her offered his unopened bottle of water when hers ran empty. An elderly woman caught Catherine's eye and mouthed, I'm praying for you. Small gestures, but they added up. A community of strangers united in acknowledging her pain. But this is where the story takes another turn. About an hour before landing, Joyce returned to Catherine's row with someone new. A woman in her 60s, gray-haired and gentle-faced. Catherine, Joyce said softly, this is Margaret Chen. She's a passenger in first class. She asked if she could speak with you. Catherine looked up, confused. Margaret smiled kindly. I overheard what happened at boarding. I'm so sorry for your loss. I wanted you to know, I was on this flight 1 year ago. I remember your daughter. Catherine's eyes went wide. You remember her? Margaret nodded, tears in her own eyes now. I was in seat 8D, right next to her. We talked during the flight. She was so excited about college, about studying psychology, about living in Philadelphia. She showed me pictures of her dorm room. She talked about you, how you'd raised her alone after her father passed, how much she admired your strength. She was a beautiful soul. Catherine couldn't speak. She just stared at Margaret, this unexpected connection to her daughter's final hours. Margaret continued, "When the turbulence hit, I tried to help her. I called for the flight attendants immediately. I held her hand in the ambulance. I visited her in the hospital twice before. She couldn't finish. I've thought about her so often this year. When I saw this flight on the anniversary, I knew I had to take it, to remember her too." The two women embraced across the seats, crying together. Joyce stood nearby, wiping her own eyes. Aaron watched this moment of profound human connection and felt something shift inside him. Justice wasn't always about punishment or laws. Sometimes it was about witnessing each other's pain, about showing up, about remembering. Margaret stayed with Catherine for the rest of the flight, sharing memories of her daughter's excitement and dreams. She talked about wanting to help teenagers with mental health issues. She said too many kids feel alone and misunderstood. She wanted to be someone they could talk to. Catherine laughed through tears. That was exactly like her, always wanting to help others. The two women bonded over this shared connection to a girl who'd touched both their lives. As the plane began its descent into Philadelphia, Catherine looked out the window at the city where her daughter had dreamed of building her future. She never made it to campus, she said quietly. Never sat in a single class. Never lived in that dorm room she was so excited about. All those dreams just gone. Margaret squeezed her hand, but she lived fully in the time she had. She was loved. She was excited. She was hopeful. That matters. That still matters. The plane landed smoothly. As passengers prepared to deplane, something unexpected happened. The man who'd initially demanded Catherine's seat approached her. His eyes were red. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I was so focused on my own comfort, my own preferences, I couldn't see past myself. Your daughter's story, it's changed me. I'm going to call my daughter tonight. We haven't spoken in 6 months over some stupid argument. Life's too short. Thank you for that lesson." Others approached too, briefly, respectfully. The businessman who'd told her to move, "I'm ashamed of how I reacted. I'm sorry." The young woman who'd called her entitled, "Your strength is incredible. Your daughter would be proud." One by one, strangers who judged her offered apologies and condolences. Catherine accepted each with grace, though she must have been exhausted emotionally. Aaron waited until the crowd cleared, then approached. "I didn't say anything during the confrontation. I just watched. I should have spoken up for you. I'm sorry." Catherine looked at him. "You weren't cruel. In this world, sometimes that's enough, just not adding to someone's pain." Her words hit Aaron hard. How often had he been a silent witness to injustice, telling himself that at least he wasn't participating? But silence could be its own form of cruelty. Joyce helped Catherine gather her things. "The airline is going to review what happened with the seat assignment error. We'll make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Catherine nodded. "I appreciate that. But honestly, in a strange way, I'm grateful it happened. Because of that confrontation, I got to meet Margaret. I got to hear stories about my daughter's last happy hours. That's a gift I never expected." Margaret and Catherine exchanged contact information before deplaning. "I'd like to stay in touch," Margaret said. "Maybe visit the memorial garden you mentioned." Catherine smiled genuinely for the first time since boarding. "I'd like that. She'd like that." The two women hugged again. This chance connection forged in tragedy, but built on love and memory. Aaron deplaned, thinking about how wrong his initial assumptions had been. He'd seen a woman refusing to move and thought she was being difficult. He hadn't known the story, the pain, the grief. How many times did people make snap judgments without knowing the full picture? How many Catherine Mills were out there, carrying invisible burdens while strangers criticized them for not being convenient enough? The story didn't end there. 3 weeks later, Aaron saw a news article. Airline creates memorial seat program for grieving families. The airline, responding to Catherine's experience, had established a policy allowing family members of passengers who died during flights to book those exact seats on anniversaries without charge. They'd also implemented better training for crew on handling sensitive situations, and updated their booking system to flag potential conflicts with more care. Catherine Mills became an advocate for the program, sharing her daughter's story to help other grieving families. She gave interviews about the importance of compassion over convenience, about the invisible struggles people carry. "Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about," she told reporters. "Maybe that person holding up the line just lost their child. Maybe that difficult passenger is sitting in the seat where their loved one died. We could all use more grace." Margaret Chen attended the one-year memorial service at Temple University that Catherine organized. The college had established a scholarship in her daughter's name for psychology students interested in adolescent mental health. Margaret contributed significantly to the fund. "It's what she would have wanted," Margaret said. "Helping young people who feel alone, making sure her dreams live on through others." Aaron wrote about Catherine's experience in his ongoing series about everyday injustices and unexpected grace. The article went viral, touching millions of readers. Comments poured in from people sharing their own stories of hidden grief, of being judged for behaviors that made sense only if you knew the pain behind them. One comment stuck with Aaron.
This story reminded me to be kind. You never know what someone's going through. Thank you for that. The man who'd initially demanded seat 8F wrote a public apology that his company shared on social media. I was that guy, the one who cared more about my seat preference than another person's humanity. Meeting Catherine Mills changed me. I'm working on being better, more aware, more compassionate. I encourage everyone reading this to think twice before demanding someone accommodate you. You might be asking them to give up something sacred. 6 months after the flight, Catherine received a letter from a teenage girl in Kansas. My mom told me about your daughter's story. I've been dealing with depression and felt so alone. Learning that your daughter wanted to help kids like me, even though she never got the chance, made me feel less alone. I'm getting help now. I'm going to be okay. Your daughter saved my life without ever meeting me. Catherine framed that letter and hung it in her home. Erin visited Catherine a year after their shared flight. She'd created a small memorial in her home, photos of her daughter, the framed letter from the Kansas girl, articles about the airline's new policy, and a snow globe from Temple University that Margaret had given her. Some days are harder than others, Catherine admitted. But I've found purpose in making sure her death meant something. Every family that uses the memorial seat program, every student who gets the scholarship, every person who reads the story and chooses kindness over convenience, that's my daughter's legacy continuing. They talked about justice and what it means. I was so angry after she died, Catherine said. Angry at the airline, at turbulence, at God, at the randomness of it all. But anger didn't bring her back. What helped was finding ways to honor her, to turn tragedy into something that helps others. That's justice to me now. Not revenge or blame, but making the world a little better because she was in it. Erin thought about power and how it manifests. Catherine had no authority, no official position, no wealth. But by simply refusing to give up her daughter's seat, by telling her truth when pressured, she'd sparked changes that affected thousands of people. Airlines revised policies. Strangers became kinder. A scholarship fund was created. Margaret found purpose in honoring a girl she'd barely known. The man who demanded the seat examined his own behavior and changed. That's real power, Erin realized. The power of one person's story told at the right moment. The flight attendant, Joyce Martinez, also stayed in contact with Catherine. That flight changed how I do my job, Joyce told Erin when he interviewed her. Now when there's a conflict, I always think, what don't I know? What story might this person be carrying? I slow down, I ask questions with compassion. I give people the benefit of the doubt. Catherine taught me that. Joyce had implemented informal training sessions with her fellow crew members, sharing Catherine's story and discussing how to handle sensitive situations with more grace. Temple University invited Catherine to speak at freshman orientation each year. She'd stand before hundreds of nervous 18-year-olds and tell them about her daughter who never got to sit in those seats, attend those classes, live in those dorms. Wear your seatbelt. Every single time, no matter how short the flight, no matter how calm it seems. It's such a small thing, but it could be the difference between life and death. My daughter's death was preventable. Don't let yours be too. Her talk saved lives. The university reported a significant increase in seatbelt compliance after implementing her presentations. Erin included Catherine's story in his book about ordinary people who faced extraordinary pain and transformed it into positive change. At the book launch, Catherine attended and met dozens of readers who'd been moved by her experience. Many shared their own stories of loss, of judgment, of finding strength in tragedy. We're a community now, Catherine said. Bound by pain but united in purpose. That's something beautiful emerging from something horrible. The anniversary flight became an annual tradition for Catherine. She'd book seat 8F, Margaret would join her, and Joyce would often arrange to work that flight. They'd sit together, remember together, cry together. Other passengers who knew the story would offer quiet condolences. The airline crew treated the flight with special reverence. It became a journey not just across the country but through grief toward healing. On the third anniversary, a young woman approached Catherine before boarding. My name is Sarah. I'm starting Temple this fall, psychology program, mental health focus. I received your daughter's scholarship. I wanted to thank you and promise you that I'll honor her memory by helping as many kids as I can. She'll live through the work I do. Catherine embraced this stranger who carried her daughter's dreams forward. She'd be so proud. I'm so proud. Thank you for letting her legacy continue. Erin's final conversation with Catherine came 5 years after that initial flight. Do you still get angry? He asked, about the unfairness of it all. Catherine considered the question. Sometimes. Grief doesn't follow a timeline or a formula, but mostly I feel grateful. Grateful for the 18 years I had with her. Grateful for Margaret finding me on that flight. Grateful for the changes that came from her death. Grateful for every student who gets the scholarship, every family who uses the memorial seat program, every person who buckles their seatbelt because of her story. Gratitude doesn't erase the pain, but it coexists with it. That's how I survive. That's what Erin learned from Catherine Mills. Justice isn't always about courts or punishment. Sometimes it's about taking senseless tragedy and crafting meaning from it. It's about refusing to let cruelty and randomness have the final word. It's about standing firm in a window seat and saying, "This matters. She mattered. I will not be moved." And sometimes, when you take that stand, the whole world shifts a little bit closer to compassion. Seat 8F on that Phoenix to Philadelphia flight became sacred space. Not officially, not formally, but in the hearts of those who knew the story. When passengers sat there, some of them would whisper a small prayer or thought for the girl who'd sat there once, full of dreams. Flight attendants would pause when passing row 8, remembering to see passengers as full human beings with stories and sorrows. The seat became a reminder that everyone carries invisible weight, and kindness costs nothing but means everything. Catherine Mills never got her daughter back. No policy change, scholarship fund or viral story could do that. But she'd taken her unbearable pain and transformed it into something that helped others. She'd turned a private tragedy into public awareness. She'd reminded thousands of people to be kinder, to be safer, to be more thoughtful about the hidden struggles around them. And in doing that, she'd given her daughter's brief life a resonance that reached far beyond 18 years. Aaron closed his book on Catherine's story with a simple truth. We're all just passengers on uncertain journeys, carrying griefs and joys that others can't see. The least we can do, the most important thing we can do, is treat each other with gentleness, because you never know who's sitting in their daughter's seat, holding on to the last physical connection they have, fighting to honor a memory while the world demands they be more convenient. In those moments, choosing compassion over convenience isn't just kindness. It's justice. It's love. It's everything that makes us human.